Hey, I'm Stephanie Feger, and Empower is my middle name. Well, not really, but it should be. I believe that empower people, and I'm obsessed with empowering you, nonfiction author, with impactful marketing strategies to help you take your important message and share it with those who desperately need it, want it, and will buy it. As the owner and chief strategist of the Empower PR Group and the author of 2 books myself, I have merged my love for reading books and writing books and marketing books to help nonfiction authors with laser-focused strategies and tactics to write books that sell, promote books to those who need and want them most, and build meaningful businesses from empowering messages. Think of this as your one-stop shop for marketing insights from an author who has been there, done that, and understands exactly where you are. Okay, so go grab a warm beverage. I have a chai tea here for me, and get a comfy blanket. Get your pens ready too, because I'm ready to empower you, aspiring author, on how to become an empowered writer. This is the Empowered Author Podcast. When I published my first book, I expected to be asked questions about the book's topic, where people could buy the book, and even if I could speak to their groups about its powerful messages. But in addition to those expected questions came the unexpected ones. Hey, Stephanie, I think I may want to write a book. How do I do that? I already have a book I've written, but I haven't a clue what the next steps are. Will anyone want to read and buy my book? How in the world do I get published? Could I really build a business from my book? Listen, these are all great questions, and I've decided to devote an entire season of the Empowered Author Podcast to giving my take on each of these questions and more. By the end, be expected to not only be an empowered author, but also an empowered writer. Come on, let's go dive in. Okay, I'm going to start with a word that's scary: feedback. It's a word many of us have trouble giving, and we have many issues with receiving. Listen, I get this. I know this because the word gives me the heebie-jeebies too. To most people, giving feedback must mean that we're struggling with something, that something is wrong or needs to be fixed, and that person you're giving it to, well, maybe they're just not the right person for the job, right? Like, that's why you're giving feedback in the first place. And then let's switch the tune and talk about getting feedback, which almost is scarier in my opinion, because the word in and of itself gives me this horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach that something bad is happening. I know at least it does for me. I'm wondering if it does for you too. If someone has feedback to give me, I quickly align it with my self-worth. Oh, they sent me an email, but they want feedback. They want to give me feedback. Obviously, I'm not good for anything in this world anymore, right? I must achieve perfection and with absolutely no feedback necessary. That's my goal in life, right? Like, am I right? Are you in that same boat too with me? In prepping for this episode, I really took a deep dive into what feedback could be for authors specifically and what it's been for me over the years. And I've realized that feedback in and of itself, the word and what is associated with it, inherently doesn't have a positive or a negative connotation. It's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong. We tend to add our feelings to feedback due to our experiences that we've had over the years from the feedback. Let that sink in for a minute. Like, feedback in and of itself is not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just something that we have now thrown and connected stuff to it based on how we've experienced feedback. If you have had experiences over the years where feedback is connected with reprimanding or getting in trouble, then of course you will run for the hills when you hear its name, which is something I've done. Not saying that I've had negative feedback experiences, all negative experiences with feedback, but typically I associate it with the negative. But what if you learned early on that feedback can be constructive, that feedback actually is how you can become your best self? Then you might thrive from it and seek it everywhere that you turn. How we process, how we accept, how we view, and how we give feedback is all in how we see it in the first place. And as with most things, our mindset matters here too. Mindset's a big hurdle and obstacle for all of us, both as authors and getting over the writing battle and getting over the launching battle and everything that comes within it. But part of getting your book to become the best book possible requires feedback. And finding ways to navigate around your mindset around it is probably the best thing you could do early on. And here's why. Because if you're willing to flip how you see feedback, my feedback adverse friends out there like me, you will likely find that feedback can have a lot of value. In fact, for authors, I would say feedback is gold. It is so gold. Feedback can do several things for you. My author friend, here's a couple. Feedback can make your book better. It can make your book better. You might already have an awesome book, but getting feedback can make it even more awesome. Feedback can give you context of how people will respond to your book before you even publish it, and that gives you time to adapt it if necessary. So you might get feedback that there's opportunities that you might have thought that you captured and you didn't. Gathering that early on is going to save you time and money very quickly. Feedback can also give you early supporters. I'll talk about that in a minute, but that's kind of exciting because when you allow people in the journey early on, these people become loyalists. They become super fans, and I'm in the business of building super fans. But on a personal level, I like to say feedback has so much power and aligns with an amazing author that I get the chance to work with, Katie Anderson, and she always talks about how 1 + 1 equals way more than 2. And I believe that with feedback as well. Because you start to see that in addition to your thoughts, when someone else comes to the table, you're making something even better. And feedback also allows you to switch, especially someone who is so close to your writing. I mean, your book is your baby. It's something that you love. And you have a tough time seeing it objectively, but feedback takes you from subjectivity to objectivity, which is really, really pivotal, especially if you want to write a book that will sell. And feedback also can help you walk away being even more proud of your work. And who doesn't want that? Listen, I know all of this from experience, actually, because right before I launched my first book, Color Today Pretty, I got some feedback that could have halted my entire career trajectory. Like, I might not have ever been having this podcast and this chit chat with you because of the feedback. It may have stopped me from forming the Empower PR group. Let me tell you a little bit about it. So early in my book process, as I was gathering all my content and getting all of the words down, I had about 40,000 words or so, and my book coach recommended, hey, Stephanie, you probably want to get some beta readers early on to read your book. And I did. I had some early readers. We'll talk more about what that looks like and some tips on how to do that. But these wonderful readers were about somewhere between 5 and 7 people that I just knew was going to love my book. Why wouldn't they? I wrote it, right? At least that's what we all tell ourselves. But I expected to get feedback like, Stephanie, don't change a thing. This book is fantabulous. Oh my gosh, the whole world needs this book. Don't stop what you're doing. Do more of this. Like, I expected all that because I just thought this content was awesome. And listen, I'm not an arrogant person. I just was divinely inspired to write, and it just felt good. And I knew it would for other people. I expected them to love it as much as I did. So I sent the book out, and I had this dreaded fear of feedback lingering. Oh my gosh, I know they're going to love it, but can't somebody email me back and tell me they love it? Because sometimes for me, in the waiting for the feedback is worse than the feedback itself. However, I expected, Stephanie, it's great, all's good, but everybody had feedback, and everybody had constructive feedback. And I decided that day that feedback was my arch nemesis. It was my kryptonite. It was enough to immobilize me. I remember getting feedback from a couple of people, and I kept thinking, well, they just don't understand it. They don't understand. They missed it. They're being too literal, or, that's just one person out of the 7. It's not a big deal. I was finding ways to compartmentalize this feedback instead of listening to it. But I remember it was the cherry on top of the banana split, y'all, when I was going down the road and I was getting feedback from somebody. It was the last person I was getting feedback from. And it reiterated feedback from other people, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And I started bawling. It was so embarrassing because I did it on the phone. It was so embarrassing, and I was an emotional wreck because I couldn't make that switch from subjectivity to objectivity. Every word to me was so important, and getting rid of anything or changing anything, I just saw as a hurdle, not as a help. In retrospect, I look back and realize that those 7 people spent hours reading my book, and I should have truly embraced from the very beginning the fact that they would be willing to give me feedback at all. Right? Because listen, we talked about it earlier. Reading a book is both a time investment and a financial investment. And so when somebody is, and I actually, between you and me, I actually think a time investment is worth more than a financial investment for many reasons. But I should have really embraced this feedback, but I didn't. And that last feedback halted me altogether. I put the book away. I don't know, for like 9 months. I can't remember, 6 months, 9 months, a year. It was a long time. That book, the entire manuscript was, and I think it was a year. The entire manuscript was just sitting on my computer. I wouldn't look at it. Every time I went to go look at it, I just wanted to get sick. I didn't want to look at the feedback. I didn't want to digest it because feedback to me was terrifying. I figured if I ran from it, it didn't matter. Maybe I didn't need to write a book anyways. What's the point? If nobody loved it as much as I loved it, right, Stephanie? That's real logical. Why would you ever write something if the whole world didn't feel the way that you did? Come on, Stephanie. I want to shake 2017 Stephanie and say, get a grip, girl. This is okay. And look at it and find the positive in it. I remember when I decided to tell my husband it's time for me to go back to my book. He had kept asking me if I was going to look at it. I'm like, I'm not ready yet. But when I went back to it, here's the crazy part. All of this feedback that I had been given that I thought was terrifying really wasn't that bad. In fact, it wasn't scary at all. It was actually really brilliant. But I hadn't been in the mindset to be able to accept the feedback the way it had been given. I couldn't see it at that point, a year previously, because I was too close to it, because I wasn't ready, because this was the first time I had done this, and feedback was harder. And let me tell you, the more you get feedback, the easier you get at accepting it, and you don't get as terrified from it. So I specifically, some of the feedback that was still scary to me was really having me dig into the book itself, the manuscript, and see if there were areas of opportunity where I could condense. And if you are somebody who has read Color Today Pretty or any of my blogs or any content I write, I'm a very verbose writer. I'm a very flowery. I have lots to say because I want you to feel like you're sitting having coffee with me or a tea. I over communicate. I guess that's the best way to put it. But I got some really great feedback. Like, Stephanie, do you really need all of this in there? Well, to me, originally it was yes, but I started to realize when we were pulling stuff out of it that maybe the book could be stronger or it was less. So I made some tweaks, and I actually had a friend, someone I really trusted, come on board with me and do some line editing. We went chapter by chapter. It took us quite some time to do it, but I know in the long run together, we made this book amazing. When I finally sent it to the publisher for professional editing, I remember sitting back thinking, yeah, they're not going to find much because we put in the work. We listened to the feedback. And when I launched the book and then launched the business and then I helped other authors launch in the process, I realized feedback, whether you're giving it or getting it, ain't so bad after all. Hey, I'm popping in here for just a second to see if you're serious about writing a book. And not just writing any book, but writing a book that will make a difference, leave a legacy, and will sell. After getting asked time and time again about how to write a book people will want and buy, I decided to create the Empowered Writer Program, a signature program here at the Empower PR Group that provides aspiring authors with the tools they need to bring their messages from their minds to the masses and do it in a way that will ensure that their books are ones readers want, need, and will buy. With a mix of self-guided content and one-on-one coaching from yours truly, this program will help you achieve various levels of success, including understanding and writing to your niche, the development of a stronger manuscript and a book, and the guidance you need to bring your book to life. Y'all, beware because this program comes with lots of feedback. But finally, right? Visit www.empowerprgroup.com/theempoweredwriter. And don't worry, we have a link to that in the show notes to get all the details and to schedule a time to chat. Let's see if this program is right for you. Okay, enough about that. Let's get back to this feedback conversation. Feedback has become something actually that I love now. Well, okay, maybe that's too strong. It's something that I can accept and know that it's going to be a positive thing. It's definitely something that I encourage writers and authors to seek. In fact, there's 4 types of feedback that I really highly recommend. And we'll talk about each of those, but just at a high level, it is editorial board feedback, editing feedback, marketing feedback, and feedback that markets. What do those mean? Let's dive in. So, editorial board feedback. First of all, what is an editorial board? Well, this is also could also be called beta readers. It's a group of early people who will read your book, get an inside peek of your book, and give you some golden nuggets of awesomeness for you to be able to adapt, tweak, and really make your book the strongest possible. These people are usually ones, when you provide your manuscript to them, you don't want them to edit the words or the sentences. That's not, you've got a professional editor for that. But you want them to tell you, potentially, if they're your target audience or target reader, what do you feel about the book? When you walk away, what does it do? Contextually, is the book sound? Is it missing something? Are you leaving them wanting more, but not in a way that helps you grow a business or sell more books? Is there something inherently important that is missing? They'll also let you know where there's places to add and subtract. And as I experienced in my own editorial board feedback, I was able to cut probably close to 10,000 words from my manuscript because of how important their feedback was and making me realize really what words were needed, what stories were needed, and what weren't. They'll also give you early insights on how people will respond. And let me tell you, as someone who has published a book with some vulnerability in it, that was so important to me because I was terrified. I'll have to tell you all the story one day of the moment that my book launched because I was so terrified of the process, but it ended up being beautiful, and having some beta readers on an editorial board really helped. So here's a pro tip for the editorial board. Listen, these people are kind of like a litmus test. They're going to let you know how the book's impact is going to come across and if it's going to achieve what you want it to be. And this is my favorite part, these people could become launch members. Here's why, because these people are now invested in you and the book. They are a part, only a handful of people get the chance to do this. So now they know your book inside and out. They know what it was and they know what it will be. And they are likely ones that are going to want to be a part of the ride and the journey with you. Okay, so that's the first type of feedback I suggest for every author is get that editorial board. And typically that is done when your book, the manuscript's complete, probably before you head it over to the publisher or right when you head it to the publisher, depending upon the type of publishing approach that you tackle. And don't worry, episode 6 in this season gives you all the information you need about publishing. The second form of feedback that I highly recommend, I don't care what type of publishing approach you do, self-publishing, hybrid collaborative publishing, or traditional publishing, you must have your book professionally edited. Y'all, seriously. Seriously. I don't even care if you're a professional editor, everybody needs a professional editor to edit their copy and content and do proofreading as well. These could also be developmental editors. So there's copy editing, proofreading, and developmental editing. That is where the book coach comes in on the developmental side and helping you really frame out your thoughts and outlines. But the copy editing and the proofreading are non-negotiables in my book. They really help ensure that your book is structurally sound and solid. They ensure that they are looking at the sentence structure, the paragraphs, the flow. They are ensuring too that you haven't missed a whole area of opportunity. So they are kind of like a follow-up to your editorial board, and this happens after the editorial board. You don't want to give a professional editor, your book until the book is as strong as you think it could possibly be. Because this is an investment. You want to make sure it's worth your investment. Pro tip here. The editors, professional editors, are going to catch things you can't and you won't see. You're too close to it, you guys. Seriously. I have this problem too. I'm too close to the content. My brain will read a sentence and know what it's supposed to be, and it won't ever see that missed word or that typo because my brain is reading it the way I'm trying to communicate it. So professional editors will be able to pick this up. Whether you plan to self-publish or traditionally publish or anywhere in between, make sure that you budget early on and invest in professional editing. It will take your book from being a good book to a great book. I've seen it time and time again. Okay, so that type of editing, so you have your editorial board, it happens probably right before you pass your book over to publisher. Usually the professional editing is connected with the publishing process. The book's typically edited before it heads over to formatting, because what if you edited out 10,000 words like I did, right? Like that would impact the formatting process. But there's another type of editing, or another type of feedback rather, feedback number 3 that I want to talk about today, that happens somewhere in the middle of this. And it's what I call marketing feedback. This is actually where the Empowered Writer program comes in. And here's why this marketing feedback is important. You could write an amazing book, but if you're not writing a book that is thinking about how to market and who to market to, your book could fall flat. It might never reach its potential. It might never be bought by anybody. And there's nothing worse than having 5 copies of a book be purchased when you know your book, it deserves to be purchased 5,000 times. So marketing feedback is when you bring someone who's a marketing professional into the mix to take a peek at your manuscript and your book and help you begin to lay out your marketing framework from the beginning. What they're going to do is think about who your niche is, who is your ideal reader, and understand everything about them. What do they think? What do they need? Where do they live? And I don't just mean physically, I mean socially, and where do they go to get their news? These are all important things. And then what they'll do with that type of research and understanding is they will help you do 2 things. They will help you think about how to write to your reader, which was it episode 3? We have in this season was all about the framework we use at the Empower PR groups, the Empowered Writer program, and that's all about our Write to Your Reader framework. But a marketing specialist and strategist will be able to help you make sure that the words you are using, the direction you are using, the contextual layout, the developmental flow, all of that is writing with your reader in mind. And then early on, they will help you create a platform for you to be able to reach these people and actually create a demand for your book in the process. And y'all, that's what you want to do. If you want to publish the book where people already want it, not when you have to convince them of a need for it. So the editorial board typically happens when you send your book right before you send it over to the publisher. I would actually recommend that you get some marketing feedback after you get editorial board feedback. That editorial board feedback is going to give you some really good insights that you'll want to tweak before you send it over to a marketing professional. However, you could also bring a marketing professional on prior to that to kind of help you in developmentally getting the right flow. And you might even want to collaborate with a book coach and a marketing professional at the same time. And then when your book's headed over to the publisher, that's when the professional editing will take place. The 4th type of feedback that I encourage authors to do is what I call feedback that markets. So this is feedback from people pretty much after your book is in publisher's hands, you feel pretty solid about it, and now it's time to start building energy and buzz. So this type of feedback could include endorsements, right? So, in the beginning of the books, when you open it up and you see, 15 different quotes from people, those are endorsements, or sometimes you'll put them on the front of the book or the back of the book, depending upon the weight of the endorsement. It might be somebody who's really well known in an industry or a niche that you want to go in. Those endorsements matter, and you can leverage those on your marketing tools, on your website, your social media, and any of your marketing materials. You could also get reviews. And I don't think you could. You should also get reviews. When the book comes out, I'm a big fan of having a launch campaign and a launch strategy with a launch team and leveraging them to help get some early reader reviews. That way then, when people go to purchase something, they will take a peek and know your book is worthy of being read. And if I'm being honest with you guys, here's the super, super honest truth is that we live in a world where most people do purchasing online and nobody purchases anything without double checking and making sure that it's worth their money. I don't care how little it is, even if it's a $15 book. In fact, probably mainly books are going to get those reviews for people to read the reviews. Because think about it yourself. When's the last time that you have purchased something without checking to make sure that you're going to be happy with it? So getting some people to do reviews on Amazon or Goodreads, other different places, would really make a big difference. The third way that you could get feedback that markets is what I call testimonials, similar to reviews and endorsements, but testimonials are could be word of mouth testimonials where they're telling people. It could be recommendations on LinkedIn that talk about you and your message. They could be things that you could put on your website and on your marketing materials. But these are usually from people who tell you, oh my gosh, this book has changed my life and here's why. So people who would share a testimonial with you, I highly recommend them to go to Amazon and write a review as well. But this type of feedback is feedback that can help you market the book, and you want to leverage it in the best possible way. Okay, so see, feedback in and of itself is not really something that we should be scared about. In fact, it can be constructive. And if you are coming to the table prepped and ready to hear feedback, which I wasn't with my first book, but was with my second, it could be game-changing. Feedback could actually be the thing that stands between your book from being good to great. It could be the thing that makes it go that extra mile, be more memorable, and make a larger impact. Feedback in and of itself is neither good nor bad. If you feel one way or another about it, it's likely because you have attributed a feeling to it, a feeling that you have experienced in the past, and you have connected it to the word. You can break that, just like you can break many mindset issues, and start to see that feedback is actually powerful. In fact, it is a tool that could save you time, it could save you money, and it could help you really succeed. I can't imagine, had I not taken the feedback in 2017 when I published my book in 2018, I may not be here today talking to you and sharing with you just how important feedback is in general. But I look at all of the feedback I've gotten since that time on how I run my business, on the types of programs I provide, on my additional books. Just as a person, right? Feedback can shape you if you're willing to look at it through the lens of positivity. Don't be scared of feedback. My challenge to you guys is to learn how to embrace it. Whatever your reason, one thing remains true. Writing a book is one thing, and marketing it is something altogether different. Listen, that's where we come in. The Empower PR Group loves helping authors market their books, but we also realize that one of the best ways to market and sell a book is to write a book people will buy in the first place. The Empowered Writer Program is one of the Empower PR Group's signature programs, dedicated to helping aspiring writers who have begun drafting their manuscript ensure that they're writing a book that meets both your needs and those of your readers. The program is a 12-week collaborative experience that includes a mix of self-guided content and reflection with dedicated one-on-one coaching with myself, Stephanie Feger of the Empower PR Group. And we will take a deep dive look at your manuscript to ensure it's prepped and ready for whatever publishing journey you want to embark upon. I would love to chat with you and see if this program is a good fit. Visit empowerprgroup.com/theempoweredwriter to learn more. All right, now, you know I'm a believer that empowered people empower people. I've empowered you, aspiring author. Now it is your turn to empower others.